I can go to
It's
Facebook.
working. Okay, we are live. Oh, actually,
Cool.
we've been live for 46 seconds.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, Eric, you've done so much work, and I don't think there's anyone who knows the book and the stories and that particular angle better than you. And so
I do it like this. When someone starts talking about a clue, and that's why I always tell people, like, if you come across, I was just doing research earlier, and I was like, so for the California puzzle, I know we got L.A. and we got San Francisco that are mentioned. Either the imagery of a baseball jersey or music, Power Records, of course, that's going to put you in L.A. But Richard Nixon. So Richard Nixon, I started going, okay, so what the hell could Richard Nixon possibly have to do with the book? So he's actually the first president to travel to China. And you look at the other presidents. Let's see, Ford went after Nixon, but Nixon was it's almost like if you go to the Chicago painting, Grant's the first president that went to Ireland. Now he was Scottish, but they gave him an honorary Irish citizenship. So I'm like, okay, so Nixon. Of course, Nixon and Reagan are the only two born Californians that held the presidency, but of course, Nixon was first. Nixon is depicted in the book. And then I remember something, I've looked for it. I got to get her to show me again. But Cindy Henry she said in the San Francisco painting, there's like a little silhouette of Ronald Reagan. And I'm on the baseball, I'm on sports. Everybody knows that. That's where all those statues where I think of that. So I was like, okay, so there's Ronald Reagan. And I haven't even done that about Richard Nixon. I know Richard Nixon was a lawyer and he went to, I think, Duke Law School. But Ronald Reagan was out, I think, in Missouri or something. He was a sports broadcaster. This is before he comes to California, joins the military, becomes an actor. But he was a broadcaster. He was a sports broadcaster. Yeah. I was like, there you go. There's something in Reagan's history, and this is like what we were talking about before we went live. All these historical figures, presidents, founding fathers, whatever. You got to go and you get this weirdo topic, whatever you're chasing. Like, see if anybody mentioned has an association. But she said it's like a silhouette. She showed it to me. I said, yeah, it looks like Reagan. I was like, man, I wonder if he's got anything to do with sports. And then boom, yeah, he does.
One for the Gipper, right? Do it for the Gipper. That was his famous saying.
Yeah.
Do it for the Gipper. So I think that, from a big picture.
And all that other kind of stuff.
From a big picture, right? Let's think about just for a sec, right? Is how did this come together? And I said, Eric, you're in Jacksonville. So I want you to put a puzzle together for Jacksonville, right? And people have done this, right? The 13th treasure in Louisville.
And I've actually thought about doing that.
Yeah. So my thing is, if I'm Byron, and I'm putting 12 of these together, right? It's like, what is driving him? What are the stories he wants to tell? And you got to recall back then he had really small daughters, right? Well, actually, they weren't even born yet. But he had been, putting this together for, I guess, not necessarily PhDs, right? This is for kind of like younger people to get out there, search around. But, it's like if you were putting this together in your city, so let's start with that. It's city, it's anywhere USA. How would you put that together? And so I think in terms of creation-wise, and this is, I posed this out in the last week where I said, hey, who is Byron? Describe him. What's your impression of this guy? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow up with all the feedback that people gave me, and I'm going to put it together. And what I would argue to you is how we understand the man is probably going to be very well reflected in the books. Or, I'm sorry, in the book, in the puzzles, right? Yeah. So he was creative and sort of quirky and inventive and a very super bright guy. Right? There's only like a couple negative comments, I think, on him or one. And then I asked the guy, hey, could you substantiate that? And he never wrote anything back. So I don't know what bone he has to pick with Byron. But so in any case, it's like, how would you put these together? And this is why in San Francisco, there's so much evidence that points to Battery Lancaster, which is my virtual background here, what you see. But it's like, would he want to show you the Golden Gate Bridge? The problem is people don't see it in there. And I'll tell you it's there. Like, it is there. So it's like, when we're thinking about, think about Roanoke, or we were talking about Charleston earlier, right? It's like, the Yorktown came into the heart like in 1976. So it wasn't that far away. This was like the centerpiece of Charleston. And so where would he want people to go? Would he want them to go to, a little park up away? Or would he want them to go to this incredible ship that has all this history, and he's a military guy, loves mission. So anyway, that story to me makes sense. And so in Charleston, when I see clock hands pointing, if I align it to Fort Sumter and I see the clock hands pointing to the boat, I'm going to go and see if there's anything that makes sense by the boat, right? So in San Francisco, same thing. Think about, wind it back to 1980, and you couldn't experience San Francisco any other way than either going there, looking at it in books, or seeing it on TV. And even then, you can't just pop up something. Hey, if you want to learn about San Francisco, you can go on the internet. You can learn absolutely everything about every square inch. Back then, maybe they did like some kind of show there. So to me, what that means is what epitomized San Francisco that Byron would want you to see back in 1980. And so, by the way, the start at Pier 43.5, where the fingers are pointing, gosh, that makes total sense, doesn't it? That he would want you to go to Fisherman's Wharf. And I want to, I'm sorry, people like the Fairmont and that whole story, and I think that's fine, but gosh, it's a nothing. It's a big nothing burger. Why would he waste this opportunity to show you all the batteries in San Francisco and Fisherman's Wharf and Ghirardelli?
I was asked about the Fairmont because somebody else did a story. This is the Fairmont. Fairmont is something that's, this thing in the book where you see something that says Native America or something that's indigenous to a city. That's the Fairmont. That's a clue that it's San Francisco, nothing else. The Ghirardelli chocolate, same thing. If you're from San Francisco, you're very familiar with the Fairmont and the chocolate confectionery. But if you're not, you got to do that research.
Yeah. These were big things.
All it does is confirm that that's the city, and now you go on the.
I agree.
The Fairmont for that. It's the daughters had it built. It was like a memorial to their father, who was, I think it was Senator Fair, I think was his name. But the first one was built. That hotel was established in San Francisco.
And ask anybody, even today, hey, where's the Fairmont Hotel? Nobody is going to tell you that unless they're from San Fran. Or you mean the Fairmont in San Francisco or the one in Chicago? It's like, okay. But I think so.
That in a secret.
In terms of trying to get to the right spot, right? My argument is, gosh, someone as smart and as creative and as ingenious and genius as Byron, he wouldn't waste the opportunity to not show you the highlights. That's my view. And so, I think that's where, big picture, if I'm going into a puzzle and I haven't looked at, New Orleans yet, really, Houston a little bit, I haven't really looked at Montreal.
Something could have happened at the Fairmont that was historical to San Francisco. Somebody, anybody in the book in history, anybody famous in there, Mark Twain, that's the reason. If you go California with Mark Twain, when he left Baltimore and traveled, he's on the Mississippi as a kid. He's in Baltimore. He's in the Northeast. Then he goes out to California. Where's he at? San Francisco. In case you had a problem figuring out the rest of the clues. There's a lot of stuff that makes you go to LA, but that's another technique Byron uses. He's giving you clues to L.A. He's giving you clues to San Francisco and California.
Yeah.
In Canada, he's mentioning Vancouver, Nova Scotia, Quebec, Montreal, all
Toronto
these cities. Yeah. So
I'll tell you, my dirty little
start the comparative research of what's in the book and see what sports.
And we have the coordinates, right? Was it Robert Fox that found the coordinates like some years ago?
I don't know who.
I think it was him.
And I got introduced to this book. I think it was 2015 or 2016. I was just kind of like dabbling around it, looking at it. But it wasn't really till Gates did a show on it, and I was like, because I just like puzzles, but a lot of this stuff was someone had already figured them out. Yeah, there's coordinates.
So that alone should tell us like the coordinates match San Francisco, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and then the bookend stuff. My whole baseball thing for San Francisco came from Palancar's bookend comment. Now the bookends, you got bookends of immigration. You got Ellis Island and Angel Island. You got the Chinese,
the arches, like the bridges.
Yeah, the immigration of the Chinese Asian people to San Francisco was during the gold rush. And that was also Mark Twain went out there for the same reason. So we're already right there. You got a connection.
Yeah. So let's think just for a second, Eric. Mark Twain, okay? Again, we don't have the internet. We have books, the Encyclopedia Britannica. Back in 1980, I mean, the internet was like a fairy tale. I mean, like, no one would believe that. So
you have to go into the library in '83 and say, "Hey, show on the books you got on Mark Twain."
So what you would do, I think, and this is where information overload hurts people, right? It can help.
Yeah.
Like part of the reason I'm at Battery Lancaster is able to walk around that area and see these four spires that match the painting, and then this portico in the background is what's in my background here. So if I hadn't had the ability to walk around this area, I would never have seen it. But as soon as I saw it, I'm like, well, that's it. Okay. But back in 1980, you didn't have that luxury, right? So what you have to do, I think, is you have to look at the highlight reel. You have to ask yourself, what were the top three things that you could associate Twain with and San Francisco? And people have a lot of different ideas about it. Well, Twain liked poker, so that's the ace side. Okay, but was he playing poker in San Fran? And so, like, one of the big things he did.
Well, is also, how many games could you actually play back then? We know there was pretty much no baseball out there. I've read things about Mark Twain where he said that was one of the sad things he missed when he left the East Coast. So learned to play poker on the riverboats when he worked on them.
And that wasn't in San Francisco. So my only point is, it's like, what are those few highlights, the things that you could say, yeah, Twain in San Francisco, right? And one of those was the takedown of General Funston. And I didn't even know who General Funston was until, I started looking at the puzzle. But he is all over San Francisco. He's a decorated hero. People thought he was going to be Teddy's VP. So it's another tie back to Teddy. But so he wrote this article. Interestingly, Funston was stationed out here in Denver. And he was a kind of a warmonger. And that's why people thought Teddy was going to pair up with him, right? So anyway, Twain just lambasted him and literally just took this guy from this high pedestal and just knocked him right off of it. And so that's a very interesting historical thing. Oh, by the way, and it ties to a military figure, Funston. Okay, but Funston, there's a park named after Funston that's out on the ocean. There's all these streets. He lived in the Presidio. He's got this incredible story. He was this like really little guy, but he was this big war hero, and I think he fought in the Rough Riders too. But in any case, so in the Shoreline Solve, you stop at Funston's grave marker. So when I'm looking and I'm trying to assess, like, hey, is that a good possibility? Yeah, I think it's a great possibility because it's such a prominent thing he did in San Francisco. It's not just something associated to Twain. How many things can you associate to Mark Twain? A billion things. So it's like, no, like what did he do there? And then I'm telling you, like pick the top three things that Twain did in San Francisco, and it better be one of those. So that clue in particular, right? It can't just be something I can tie to Twain. It's got to be specific to SF, in my opinion. And so if your clue doesn't involve that, then it's gosh, it could be anything, right? It could be anything.
Yeah. Mark Twain's got to have some association with what you're trying to make. We got a question. Someone's asking what are the red circles?
So
I'm assuming that's the red balls in the Milwaukee puzzle.
No, they're talking these, I think, behind me.
Oh.
On my virtual screen. So so at the dig site at Battery Lancaster, you see these. Let me move out of the way here. You see the 4 posts of the bridge. I got a duck. Move back. You see the 4 posts that were put. Actually, what you see here on the bridge was not necessary. It was necessary to save the fort underneath it. So it's a very historical thing. Yeah, thanks. And so from the dig site, you look through these 4 spires and you see this portico up in the hill, just like you do in the painting. So it's part of the reason why I like the spot so much. It's like you actually see from this site what's in the painting. And now the portico doesn't...
building. I mean, what is that hill?
Yeah, so that's actually the Marin Highlands. And so if I can present, I can show you what's up there. But it's a battery. It's called Construction 129.
I wonder if that's the same that's in the boogeyman photo with the frog with the sax. And then you see the big.
No,
same place.
I think that's Coit Tower, isn't it?
I'm not familiar with a lot of geographics out there outside Alcatraz and Angel Islands.
Okay, so yeah, you can look it up. It's out online. It's called Construction 129. It's freaking cool. If you're in San Francisco, go over there, okay, and see this thing. It's like a scene out of Star Wars. So you walk through that tunnel, and I'm trying to find my pictures right now. You walk through this tunnel, and you sort of hit this clearing where you look down, and then you go through another tunnel, and it's the ocean, and there's this massive battery that was never completed. So what's interesting, though, is I had to go up there once I saw this. And when I took this picture, it was a super clear day, and that's rare in San Francisco, right? So the few times that I had been in and around the site before, I didn't see this because you couldn't see that far. And on this day, it was late fall, and it was just spectacular. It was like super warm and quiet, and there were no clouds and no fog. And all of a sudden, it's like, boom, here's the portico sitting up there. So, he's not going to draw it exact, but at least visually, what makes this site so compelling, it looks like the painting. And so, anyway, I would just encourage people to go up there. It's called Construction 129. The views of San Francisco and the bridge, like go there on a clear day. It's unreal. It's so cool. So that's what that is. So I'm just sort of showing that. What I think, if this is right, this kind of represents the portico down represents the fort, which is Fort Point, sitting underneath this arch in the bridge.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna try to find some pictures of that, Eric, and then I'll share them. But like score one for Byron. I would never have driven up there, probably. Instead, like you actually, when you go up there, it's like a one-way road, and there's all these other batteries up there. And so, looking at the eyes in the painting, like in my view, I'm looking at those eyes, right? I'm saying, what are these things? It's too stylized. It's right, and And so, I mean, we sort of determined, my buddy Kurt and I were like trying to figure out what these things are, and they look very much like the batteries. So we were on to that idea that this thing is going to be out of battery, probably. But in the course of that research, so I took this drive up there. I just encourage people to do it. It's so cool. It's so cool. Go up there, the views.
Are you on the city side of the bridge taking that photo?
Yeah. So it's called the Vista Point South. It's right near the Roundhouse Cafe and the toll booth. So I'll find those pictures here in a sec. But I don't want to monopolize everything. But yeah, there's two in this one. There's in the painting you have to rotate the painting 90 degrees, and when you do that, all of a sudden you see a lot of imagery that you see in and around this area. But just big picture, Eric. For me, it's like, would Byron want to end up or somehow integrate the world's most iconic bridge? I think yes.
That imagery, yeah, that imagery would be too easy. I would never expect that. I've always been big on, there's stuff he could have shown with New York. Like someone says, why didn't you use a Big Apple? I was like, too easy. That's too easy.
So think of this.
You can't use iconic terminology and imagery of major cities. Like in Chicago, he used the water tower, which is a memorial to the Great Chicago Fire, but Palancar turned it into windmill, try to cover it up. I said that's a perfect example. He's
100%.
The other words that they're showing giants, and they're talking about towers and fortresses and great giants and stuff like that. I said that's just wordplay. You got to figure it. Anytime you see that stuff or you see a word that you go, I was thinking about this earlier for New York when it talks about hard words. I said a lot of hard words out there are either words that people aren't familiar with or words that people don't use anymore. So you either have to look up the word or look up the definition of it. And some of the words he uses in the book, they have definitions that you're not familiar with. You still got to play with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
He used about every single. Now, I was talking to my buddy Jason about this a while back. I said, this is the most, we know this was based on Masquerade, but Byron turned it up 10 notches. He made this the most difficult treasure hunt book in the world, in my opinion. There's so many different techniques he used that it's just, if this book was a success, they still today would not all be found. I mean, I'm at places where I'm like, I know it's here. This is the last step. I can't figure out where it exactly is. And you think the book and the solving the puzzle and the book tells you to solve the puzzle. You didn't even have to go to San Francisco if you figured it out. You could have filled out the form in the book, and Byron was alive, and sent it to him. He said, right. I'll send you to Jim, and I'll send someone out to dig up the cask.
Yeah, I mean, if he was still alive, this would be an afterthought because he would have directed people in. So, Eric, I don't know. I'm sharing that.
For him, if you're doing a treasure hunt book, I mean, say this thing sold 1 million copies, it would have sold 5, 6 people would have thrown it down, new people would have picked it up. He made it that difficult. He did not want them found quickly. And when he says, "Oh, it's easy," he's not telling you the truth. That's what you want to sell a book,
especially with no internet.
Yeah.
I mean, so Eric, I'm sharing that photo. I don't know if that's coming through or not. Maybe you. I don't know if you have to share that, but
I just got to add it.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
So that is what you
Dirty Harry movie. I know that.
So you can kind of see. If I blow this up a little bit,
and Clint Eastwood is depicted in the book too.
So you walk through this long tunnel, right? And so here's the. It says, despite its imposing appearance, construction on time was never used or even completed. It has been armed with 2 guns having a massive 16-inch diameter barrel. Each weapon weighed almost 1,000,000 pounds.
Yep.
So, I mean, again, score one for Byron. I would never have gone up there.
What you're talking about. I just saw a guy was showing Dirty Harry 1971 locations. This is part of the. This is when Dirty Harry's doing the ransom run from phone to phone, and when he comes out, the building's still over there to the right, and it was like a hot dog stand with phone booths. And remember, the guy was on the phone, and Dirty Harry had to knock him out of the way, and the guy hung up and then called right back, and he goes, "Who was that?" He goes, "Just nobody." And then Harry
going deep into memory banks to try to remember that.
Yeah, but it was the original Dirty Harry, and then I remember when somebody else had posted something about this. It might have been you, and I said, and they were posting the cross. So Dirty Harry got up to the cross. That's when the killer attacked him and started beating the crap out of him and took the money from him. And
those movies were so awesome.
But Dirty Harry, his character, he was a detective for the San Francisco Police Department.
Yeah.
And then I said, I know Dirty Harry's in the book. It's in the illustration where they're building the train. And he's one of the ones sitting there reading a book.
Okay.
And I said,
so let me pause you there for a sec. And so when you think about how these things were created, so this is on the other side, by the way. This is where the guns would have been, and it literally looks like a scene out of Star Wars. So this is the view from up there. So this is looking back from Construction 129 back to the city.
Nice,
you can see
location.
It was an incredible day. I mean, I was so lucky. But so you really think about the construction of the using the word construction, but the construction of the book and how. Winding this back to what the question I posed you about, hey, if you put something together in Jacksonville, like I've been to Jacksonville like once or twice, okay? Just haven't spent really any time there. But where would you want someone to go? And what's some of that cool history? And my argument to people is, as we're trying to get these things figured out, gosh, he's probably going to give you a highlight tour. Yeah, and then ask yourself, now, again, I don't think that's like the main thrust, but it's probably, and so people say, well, what about Cleveland? It's in this little obscure, well, with all due respect to Cleveland, there's nothing iconic. Places that people say, hey, I got to go visit, right? But in San Francisco in particular, why the bridge? And to what you were saying before, if JJP puts the bridge in, game over. Like everybody knows, but instead people are chasing up to GGP and all these other places. Yet the bridge is actually in the painting, I would argue. It's just he's and so
in the photo you can see on the right hand side the high tower of 3. It's got 3 antennas on it, so everybody just automatically assumes. I think a lot of the San Francisco puzzles a visual. Education, justice for all to see. That's part of my. At the time the book's released, you were supposed to visit Candlestick Park. That was home of the baseball and the football team. But from the stands, you could see, all that.
So here's,
more concerned about the verse being out of order.
No,
you just need to break it down and see what even in the Houston, which is this month. I've already told everybody the Dick Dowling statue in the middle of the south entrance, because it's the Confederacy. There's in the middle of 4 Lake. There's 2 lanes over here on both sides. First, you got to cross because you were supposed to come down, cross. There was a historical marker. But it says from Treasure Ground, looking back, there's a fountain and a whistle sounds. So you've already come through the park because you can't park there. So you got to park at the park. You see the fountain. You end up at Dick Dowling. And there's a fountain because you already passed it. You passed the zoo. You passed pretty much everything. Whistle sounds. You can't see it, but you can hear it. But standing there looking back, you're looking back north into the park. I said, that's about simple it is, but you really don't understand what that verse means till you actually get to that point. Right across south, there's a 3-wing building. 3-wing is... Herman, I was telling someone the other day, I was like, Herman Park, where you go to ride the train. That whole area is Herman Park, even the medical center. This was a massive property that was donated.
Right.
And they turned part of it into the hospital. So you have the hospital imagery. The columns are on the north end. I said, you're just looking at stuff that's for the park. You see train tracks. Oh, there's a train. You know, the desert imagery. Yep, Houston used to be a desert. You're jumping back and forth in the history of 982 train. Yep, memorialized here. Dick Dowling. If you're there and you go, who the hell is this guy?
So you like Herman Park in Houston?
Yeah, it's 100. I think it's 100% there.
That's where I started looking.
I actually reported that location, and I just figured out when I was doing back research on Chicago, and I went, okay, so this is Grant Lincoln, and you see all the north-south imagery, even in the Houston verse. You see the water tower connected to two paintings. And I was going through all that, and I was looking in the book, and I was like, so where the hell, when I got to, I can't remember, I think it was the Irishman, when it said Georgia, and I said, what the hell, what does Georgia have to do with the Civil War? The only thing that popped up was the Irish regiment out of Georgia. That was the Confederacy's Irish regiment. They took all the Irishmen, and, the Irishmen are Scotsmen. That's the trick. And I was the first one who reported that. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back.
Oh, you can. Go ahead.
The instructions. It says the Irish-Scottish ferry traveled together because they were closely related. That means they traveled together because even today, the Irish-Scottish people are the most closely related people by DNA. So if you were born in Scotland, you have Irish blood. If you're born in Ireland, you have Scottish blood. So you take the Scottish Grant to Chicago with their emerald. The second ferry is the Irish. And then when you go to the south of the Civil War, you just flip them. The Irish ferry had the ruby and the Scottish ferry had the emerald. And I said, I was sitting there going, okay, so there's no Confederacy in this story. And I went, oh, so you flip them. And the other story is about this. Even Ben Asen said Byron's favorite historical war was the Civil War. You can't tell the story of the North without telling the story of the South. In the South, he just took you to Houston, something completely off the wall, but it's founded by Irish and an Irishman. Sam Houston was Irish. Stephen Austin of Austin, Texas, led the first settlers there. He was Irish.
Yeah.
Dick Dowling was a born Irishman that went to New Orleans and then came to Houston. And
see, but again, I can't speak to Houston. I do intend to go up, but look, if it's Herman Park, it's gonzo, right? Because they redid the entire park.
No, but where his monument was, if you are on the south end of Herman Park on the highway, his statue is right where you turn in. It's in the middle of the median, right at the end.
Okay.
They moved the statue, but the Civil War has to do with the connecting the Garden Goyle, the African ferry, to there. So it's telling you to look at the planter. But that planter that statue was in is monstrous. It's probably 20 feet long and oh god.
Yeah. No. So I think Herman Park.
It's huge.
And I can't really comment that much on that one. Herman Park itself is historic and it makes sense. And so my only thing, I think it's actually up at the San Jacinto. Because you look over water and there used to be an oil refinery. So given, I think there's the Arabic connection to Houston, which I read up on, and that's a big part of Houston. But in any case, but yeah, I think like Herman Park, is that a place where he would want you to go based on
that Arabic
history?
I think a lot of people get confused.
Would he want you to go to Herman Park? I think that makes a lot of sense based on all the history in that park and in that. But in any case, that's for a different.
It could lead somewhere else. But see, like the Energini is. God, who was that guy? That guy made a post about that, the Energini connection to the oil rigs and all that.
Yeah.
And we know Houston is the home of all the major headquarters of the oil companies. So Dick Dowling, and also the Backyard Barbecue, which is about conflagration events and fire. And then you go into that story of Houston, you learn about the Texas City disaster that killed like the entire fire department. And that's the reason why they don't ship ammonium nitrate on ships anymore, because a very small fire basically destroyed the place. But Dick Dowling was a founding member of Houston's first fire department. He is the descendant of Backyard Barbecue. And then the Energenie, which is about oil, Dick Dowling was one of the founders of Houston's first oil company. So you got him connected directly to two stories. And all you got to do is Dick Dowling, and I would go, did Dick Dowling have anything to do with oil? Because he was a bar owner. He was a hero of the Confederacy to the Civil War, the Battle of Sabine Pass. Plus that battle at Sabine Pass, because he was so outnumbered, was compared to the Battle of Thermopylae with Xerxes and Leonidas. A direct quote to that. So that throws a little in, of course, Xerxes, that was the Persian. But I think most of that stuff, Araby is James Joyce. He's the most famous Irish author. And he actually has a book by the same name. Everybody's taken Araby. And I lived in the Middle East for 4 years. They call them Middle Eastern. They call themselves Middle Eastern Arabic. They don't call themselves Araby. Araby is a book. But the story he wrote, Araby, is about a kid in a shopping area of the Middle East. You all right, Doug? That's right. He just took a spill off the couch. You all right? You getting old? Yeah, good thing nobody could hear that. But it's about a kid that falls in love with a girl, and there's actually a girl. There's actually a mention in the book of a girl, and that her name's Ruby. And that's
when you think
I would have is the Ruby. So I'm like, but it's that imagery of the Persian, the Middle Eastern, all that stuff. Is Houston has something in common, because that area where Houston was built was a desert. That's the reason the man-made bayou goes through it. They had to route water to that city. If you're going to build something in the desert, you got to have Marcy.
Yeah, I'm interested to get into the Houston. I do some business down there, so.
But there's so many.
In any case,
so many clues that you got, and then you just got to bring them together and go, I don't need that. These are going together. This ain't. It's just a whole. Just encircle yourself three-dimensionally with all these clues coming in. What they all have in common. And for Houston, you got desert, you got fire, you got oil, you got just like Fortress North. Okay, fortress is just another word he's using for building. But when he uses glass, what's Houston known for? Modern glass skyscrapers. You go to the oldest skyscrapers in New York. Chicago was kind of second with the skyscrapers, and they were the first ones that kind of dabbled into the glass skyscrapers, which was a catastrophe because the windows were popping out.
That's happening in Philly right now, I think.
It was the city that perfected that technology. And if you look at downtown Houston, anybody that lives there, I got a friend that's from there, and she's like, "Oh yeah," she said they're like all glass, like unlike any other city. Jacksonville, so Eric, got one, and it's barely, big glass windows, but you could, they're just as prominent as the concrete facade, so you really wouldn't call it a glass skyscraper. But that's for Houston, that's just part of it. But the main focus of Houston is the South of the Civil War. And I worked on that puzzle for 2.5 years. Is
that right? Yeah.
Just don't get, but you see the imagery you see in there, you see when you look at the Houston painting, you see the camel and the rhino. That's the zoo. You see the heart. The ruby. If you zoom in on it, it looks like a heart. Yeah. And that's I think his name is Dr. Bagley. He's a world renowned. He's got a statue there. He was a world renowned heart surgeon. That's some of these cities are well known medical stuff. Go ahead.
So when you think about, again, I just come back to this idea. You want to make something in Jacksonville. And so how I think these so Byron wants you to go on a tour. I mean, sometimes yes and sometimes no.
Yeah. You're going to learn something, whether it has to do with the puzzle or not. Byron was also a teacher at one point in his life.
So the thing about, like, let's say Cleveland, with all due respect to Cleveland, okay, it's not at the same level of iconic places and things that I think Byron would want you to see. So in San Francisco, you better believe it, because and it's, by the way, it's all on the shoreline. It's not up in GGP. GGP, it's actually at the third most visited, I looked this up, the third most visited city park. It's a they get tons of visitors there, okay? But the problem with being up...
Not a problem.
What's that?
GGP's got some... I know a guy that was in there. I ain't going to say his name. He's sneaking through there in the dark because he's trying to check his spots. And, man, I started laughing so hard on the phone.
Look, GGP has a bunch of problems. The biggest problem is you can't see anything from up there. And so again, why I'm advocating for this spot is not only is there a mountain of evidence that supports Battery Lancaster right here that you're seeing in the background, but there's nothing in GGP, right? It's not, if ask 100 people in Jacksonville, have they ever been to the Golden Gate Park? They're going to say, oh, the bridge, right? Like, no one goes to San Francisco to go visit GGP. It's a really cool city park. There's history there, yeah, okay? But you miss out on all of this iconic places and sites of San Francisco. So would Byron really put this whole thing together and put you up in the city park where you can't see anything? You can go, I think it's Strawberry Hill. You can go up, it's at the high point. And again, you Google Maps, go up there. You can barely see the bay just a little bit, like on one spot.
Yeah, okay. But there's a strawberry in the painting. That could mean exactly where is Strawberry Hill.
Well, and that's what confusing people and why they're headed up there. But in any case, okay, and so people would say, well, how do you know that? Well, I want you to step back just for a second and think what a huge miss it would be for him to not show us these things and want us to go to these places that everyone knows and loves. So the thing I've thrown out there to people on this is, if you're looking at and look, people have dug how many holes in GGP for decades, okay?
Oh, yeah.
But it's huge. You're gonna huge. Yeah, it's enormous up there.
Everybody look at that task alone. It's like, you got to know where you're supposed to be, because you can get somebody to say, hey, you got a 20-year permit to dig wherever the hell you want. They're not going to find nothing.
But would Byron? So if you go to GGP, okay, you're going to plan a trip there. You're going to go, and you're going to dig all day in your spot or whatever, and then what are you going to do? You're going to head down to the shoreline. You're going to go to Fisherman's Wharf, and I promise you, if you go to San Francisco, you will go to this spot that I'm showing you right here.
There's a ton of in that area.
So what Byron and who he was as a person and what was interesting to him and all this, would he bypass in San Francisco all these highlights? So to the answer to this question, would he want you to go on a tour? I think that's very logical in San Francisco, and I do think that's what he actually did, okay? What a miss it would be to not, like, show you. If you're on the shoreline, you see the city the whole time. You see Alcatraz the whole time. You go to Fisherman's Wharf, and you end up at the world's most iconic bridge. So I think from a story perspective, this idea of a tour of San Francisco makes a ton of sense. And by the way, the solve idea that I've laid out is an easy way to get there. So, but in Cleveland, it's not a journey puzzle, right? You go all of, 20 yards or something. But there's nothing to see in Cleveland, with all due respect. People from Cleveland, hey, I'm from Michigan originally, so we automatically hate everything about Ohio. But in any case,
Cleveland and Chicago got, once you get there, you see the imagery in the painting. It's like two paintings with stuff right in your face. And Boston, home plate's there, but kind of smaller. Poundcar even said that those were the three easiest ones, and I think that those were just the Kickstarter ones. like
and people say,
get everybody else excited. The rest of
what
them,
are the iconic spots of Chicago? Like, hey, if I asked 100 people on the street, where would you want to go in Chicago?
a whole bunch of stuff in Chicago.
I mean, what's like the shoreline? It's really pretty there. And again, growing up in Detroit, we went to Chicago to have fun, and because Detroit sucked back when I was there. But so yeah, like he's taking you on the shoreline, and by the way, he likes views over water, as far as I can tell.
Someone wants to know if you got a dig spot.
Of course, I'm showing it to you right here. But there's big problems with Battery. It's Battery Lancaster if you want to go look it up. But I can show you a couple more things here. But so you got the situationally, right? This is where let's get the big picture right. And so some people are up in this obscure park up in San Francisco. It's named after a woman. I can't remember the name of it because I'm not paying attention to it. But would he really want you to be in this tiny little park where you don't experience anything of the greatness of San Francisco? So, I would argue no, he's not going to do that.
With the baseball, with the book, you're going, with the Mark Twain history and the baseball. I think Mark Twain's the first key because you got to figure out that, and everybody's an object of his. Is an object of his attention. Okay, so you had poker, pool, baseball, young girls. He's almost like Benjamin Franklin in New Orleans. It's like I remember years ago somebody was talking about like, hey man, do you ever read these stories about Ben Franklin and these young women? And I was like, yeah, yeah, that's at high school. Mark Twain, same thing. Mark Twain, and this is near the end of his life. I tell people to Google it. Mark Twain with young girls. He's got multiple pictures, like sitting on his porch with, and it's ain't no different to today. Today, he was famous. He probably had money, and the young girls are like, "Hey, I love Mark Twain. I don't care he's 90." It's like, oh man. And he really, at this point of his life, he basically wasn't doing anything anymore, and people started to look down on Mark Twain, like, "Hey, who's that is?"
When he was in San Francisco?
Huh?
When he was in San Francisco?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Surrounding himself with young girls and everybody, just like today, to be like, oh, geez.
Wow. I didn't realize he was that late in life. Hey, Eric, do you want to show this screenshot?
Here it comes.
So this is Battery Lancaster.
You took this photo?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. And so, it is clear as a bell out there too, isn't it?
It had like one of the most perfect days ever out there. But the thing about this area, so the problem, I'll cut to the chase here. You can't see my pointer, I don't think. You can't see my mouse, but right where the red staircase leading down into the Battery. If you were to go straight towards the bridge, there's a few people standing on the trail. That whole trail there is brand new, and it cuts right into the dig site. So when you orient yourself to this area, the first problem with understanding it looks very little like it did back in 1980. So they've done a massive amount of improvements, not to the Battery itself here, but the area where you see people standing. And so, in essence,
they were ready to get to war building this thing.
Oh yeah, I mean the history of these batteries. Like I'm a little bit of a history buff in military stuff. I like that, but very casually. This stuff is like wildly interesting. Looking back at all the old photos of the batteries and these guys that lived there and firing off shells into the ocean.
To build that stuff. I mean, yeah, and you can tell that fortification was designed to take a bombardment. But those guys, they would have sunk whatever showed up out there.
And the other cool thing, and that's what it was designed to do, Eric, right? Is to hit the ships coming in. But so they had these hidden guns that wouldn't
make it.
That would like come up, and they would fire, and they could like bring them back down so they could protect them. So they actually have one gun at Battery Chamberlain. And they used to do demos there. But it's all of these batteries, sadly, a lot of them are in major disrepair. But if you like history and military, like it's really fascinating. So anyway, the problem with this area, I'll tell you why a lot of people. Well, first of all, I don't even think they're here, and of course you'd want to be at the bridge, I think.
Well,
But
let me
this area has been filled in a lot.
Is this a national park area?
Yeah. This is in the Presidio.
Okay.
So it's the Golden Gate National Recreation Area, I think is what they call it. So it encompasses like a ton of land across the bridge in the Marin Highlands up where those batteries are. That's all protected as part of this. All the way down to towards China Beach. And it also includes Alcatraz. So, but in any case, someone asked about this dig site. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to admit any violations of the law. However, I think maybe some of this area has been probed. But the big
by who? Who probed by who? Buddy?
The big problem with this area, like so many of them, it's it's been changed so much.
Yeah.
And
there used to be don't go up in there with a shovel.
Okay, so it's like this whole.
They'll get you at Golden Gate Park. I can tell you right there. Don't go into GGP at night. There's sensors that pick you up. That story I was telling earlier about the guy. He's creeping through the bushes. He said, He sat on a bench and it got dark and he hears this beep 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 beep. And he said, not even a minute after that, these guys come running with flashlights. And he goes, man, I thought they didn't see me. And they come right to him. He had to throw his probe.
What park was this, or where was he?
He said, oh, man, I was back there. I got lost. I'm trying to get out of here. He said, they didn't believe a damn word. And I said, and, there's a lot of drug stuff. But they got motion detectors in there at night. And I guess
this is GGP.
Yeah, he said, there's a lot of dope heads, a lot of drug use going on in there. So you can't even sneak around in there without triggering something. And they know exactly where you're at in the park. And I said, you got to be kidding me. He goes, yeah, I heard this beep, 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 beep. And I was like, what the hell was that? He goes, no, I said, these two flashlights coming in. He said, them guys were coming right at him the entire time. And as he tried to, I guess, they know where the path leads. They kept just.
I mean, people have been digging that park up for 40 years. Come on.
Yeah.
So anyway, this spot.
About digging with him, I don't think. I think it was more they were checking to see if he was, involved in dope or something like that.
Yeah.
But going in there at night, if they got that kind of security, you sure as hell don't want to be in there at night. You're probably going to get mugged or something else.
I personally don't believe the box is there. But in any case, so this area, it's changed a lot. But I've shown this a bunch of times, and I don't want to just keep re-showing it to people, but the purple dot that shows up is the old roundhouse. It used to be purple. In the actual Battery Square, it was raised up. So, again, when you look at the verse for San Francisco, it's giant pole, giant step, right? So the giant pole there was a flagpole here sitting right in the middle of the thing. And then it dropped off like really fast, and you had to take stairs down. Now this whole area is filled in. So all this area in here is now filled in. So two things: if you go to Google today, the Roundhouse Cafe is now white. It's not purple anymore. So you're not going to pick that up, and this area is all filled in, so you don't see this as a big square. Yeah. So it was actually very square, and so again, this is one of part of the imagery that shows up in the painting that confirms like, hey, this is a spot.
All right.
So
my dad Douglas to the group.
Yeah, there. Yeah.
He got his. So
I think Eric, the bigger picture idea that I've learned.
What's up, Douglas?
Hey, how you doing?
What's up, Douglas?
Hey, Mark. Keep on going.
So the other thing, and you guys have probably, these are all my, I'm trying to find I've got this one from 1987 back to the, oh, here it is. Okay. So what you have to do, you have to, because these areas have changed so much. You've got to spend, I don't know how many hours, maybe you guys are the same way, countless hours trying to find these old photographs, right?
Oh, yeah. Been there, done that.
And so that is another reason why I think, a lot of these aren't found yet. It's the obvious clues that people would have seen and said, "Oh yeah," like it's the history is taking them away from us. So you have to go back. You have to historic aerials and these old photographs. And especially for Sam, I've searched, I don't know, like must be days or even weeks for these various pictures, and I've located some. But as an example, so you can see how elevated the battery is here. So I think, and someone laid this out before, and then I'll shut up. But the giant pole is this giant flagpole that was sitting in the middle of the battery. The giant step it's coming down off the battery. So if you look and it's hard to see here, but this was the chin basically of the ferry, and then sort of down into this area here is the dig site. Again, this whole area you can see it had these massive trees in it. This is 1987, I believe. Big trees in here, so they cleared all this out, and they put in trails, and then they cleared it out again in I think 2011, and that's now how it looks. And they filled all this in. So imagine all the construction and
renovation.
So there's
they're either burying this stuff. I remember the one guy there was a Golden Gate Park that's just off the bridge there. Mm-hmm. I don't know where he was from, but he thought it was buried like in the middle of a grass area where they added a road, and he was like, now it's under the street, and I was like, I don't know about that. I was like,
I mean, who knows?
You had was right under the road, like in that big field. I was like, come on. I know they would have dug that up at least 3 feet before they paved the road, and they would have found, 2-3 feet, laid base. They would have come across the cask.
So this whole area here has been shaved and raised, and there's a sign actually I found in the grass, believe it or not, here from 2011 that said, "Hey, we're replanting this with native, or we're letting the native plants take back over." So if, for example, I'm not saying I did this, but if you were to go and try to probe through all this stuff, so not only are there these new trails that kind of cut, but you can't GP, like this trail here, I'm pretty sure it's been thoroughly probed, okay?
Yeah.
This isn't the right area here. This is down here, but this is the kind of stuff that you'd have to get through to investigate. I'll tell you, it is absolutely gnarly. If you tried to probe in here, I'm just going to guess, you can get down about 2 inches because it's so gnarly with roots and all this other stuff. So just back to my other point is, if this is the right site, I think it is. Good luck. Like, it probably was taken out through all this construction, and then even today, you can't get a probe in here, a GPR. Try to shovel. Try to shovel in between these two plants. I dare you.
I don't think I don't think you can dig a hole deep enough to bury anything out there.
Well, this again, it was
you'd have rock right underneath that. Probably not even a foot.
Oh, it's rocky and gnarly, and
there's nothing in the book that said Byron buried all of them.
I mean, you said that
3 feet
that was all renovated too, right?
The what?
You said that area he just showed was all renovated, right? Many times.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a chance that somebody could have found the cast, didn't know what it was, and just tossed it in the garbage can.
That's a massive possibility.
This is that area. And so you can see this trail cutting through is kind of is right in the spot. So how much did they go to, and this was all cleared. Like, I show you pictures of this all cleared out. But I'm showing you a picture from 87. There's these tall trees in there. And there was a trail in here somewhere, but it's now been overgrown. And like this trail, I don't know, man. I'm not a construction guy. But so in any case, this area I think is right. How are you going to get it out of here? But I think this one's gone. This is
a lot of that there. That's like terracing. That's the way. That's like that garden. You got Florida and the swamps, and you got the Garden Girls talking about gardening. So you got bugs, too much moisture in Florida. You got desert conditions in Texas. And that's basically what you got out in California. That's probably the reason why they don't touch a lot of that in California, because it's so rocky. And they got mudslides and stuff like that. So that natural vegetation also, it'll grow on the rocks. And basically its compost is just its deadfall. Yeah, but that's what they do a lot. You could see the path. That's a terracing path that starts up. They don't, they're probably just barely cutting into the rock to make them paths go around the way they do, because that's basically a stone cliff.
Yeah, so this was another one that I found. Again, looking at, this was 84. So this trail isn't here anymore. Yeah. It winds around, and there's no sort of big hump here. This is all filled in. Or it's been actually shaved. I think they've shaved it. But so look at all the crap and stuff in here. So I think it would have been on the other side of all of this stuff. But
that's like any coastal city. That's exactly what there is. Natural areas right off Florida look like.
Yep. Yeah, that's true.
And some of them are low. You could, me being 6'2", I could walk through it. But there's no way you can see your feet. The bed's it's so thick, below your waist, you can't even see where you're stepping.
So, Douglas, how many holes have you dug in the ground?
Enough to know that digging is hard, much harder than you think going into it.
Yeah. So, here's another big picture thing is he talks about it being buried in sand and stuff. You better believe it. So no. I did an operation. I'm not going to tell you exactly what, at the Wright Brothers Memorial. Okay. Yeah. And it's very sandy there, and it's super easy to dig.
Yep.
Okay. Near these batteries, it's very sandy and easy to dig. Right. So this is why, if I'm digging 12 of these, it won't take me long to be like, okay, I'm going to put this in a spot where it's going to be sandy and easy to dig. Not always, but I do think
Charleston used to be all sand in 1981. An entire sand patch.
We're all on my property. I'm probably about 4 miles from the ocean, but I only got to dig down the yard about 1.5 feet, and I hit beach sand. All these coastal areas in the East Coast, it's all sand.
Yeah, that's true.
They've just thrown dirt on top of it. Well, if you go to Roanoke, it's Micah Driftwood. That's the beach.
See, the problem is
they can't dig on the beach out there, Roanoke Island, anymore either. But it's changed so much there. You don't know that exact. I think Roanoke is the exact spot. That path beckons you to the beach. You would have stopped, gaze north at the wing, which is the Wright Brothers Memorial, and dig. He gave you a line right in front of you. But the gates collapsed. It made a little curve to the right. See that point on the beach, you don't know where we're supposed to be. If all the storms haven't, a lot of erosion there. If the storms haven't washed that treasure box away, if it was sealed and, there was a lot of erosion during a hurricane or something. Because
I don't think he would put it too close for that reason, or it would need to be elevated. So again, I did an operation myself in Roanoke. I wasn't on Roanoke Island. I thought that was wrong. I think it's probably right. But, he would have been that smart to know to not put it in a place that would be compromised by the ocean, I think. So people are kind of way down on the beach there.
I bury it there because everything else is private property. Private property.
White Point Gardens is always flooded. Is always flooded, and anything could happen. Whole bunch of times.
If he went 3 feet, that's probably the one he buried 3 feet because it was on the beach. That would have been pretty easy.
They say if somebody flushes a toilet in downtown Charleston, it floods.
So isn't that reason why he wouldn't put it there?
They're like New Orleans. A lot of people don't realize New Orleans is below sea level. Downtown Jacksonville.
Yeah, 100%.
New York is. So that's why there's seawalls. What did they have? Was that Hurricane Sandy in New York when the water busted over the wall and flooded the subways? And I'm like,
See, and Byron wasn't dumb. He would know this, right? He's a smart guy, and he would know this, right? If he was just of average intelligence.
He's not Nostradamus.
Okay, but Douglas, I think you're proving my point, sir. The fact that if that area floods, which it does all the time, people knows about Charleston, that area down there. So that would be a reason why not. I'm not saying it is the reason why not, but that is a reason why not.
Your place isn't any better for that kind of flooding.
Well, it is though. It is because it's elevated way up above the water.
It's not. It's not. It's you're in pluff mud over there.
It's like 12 feet above the water.
You try to bury stuff in pluff mud, nobody's ever going to get it again.
No, it's not in the mud. It's up on top. But hey, pal, how are you feeling, by the way?
I don't know. I'm tired, but it's all
good. All right. Just want to make sure.
I'm taking a little break. I've taken a little break recently from the grind.
Yeah.
Do a lot of work. Costs me money. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're going flipping crazy. You do this stuff every day.
Yeah, but we got something that we're putting together that for the future. So I got announcements coming up later. I don't want to do it right now, but Mark knows what I'm talking about. Eric, you know what I'm talking about a little bit. I haven't briefed you yet.
Yeah.
But we want to figure out a way to people that can debate in some kind of forum, and the people can vote, sort of deal.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. No, I'd sign me up.
You know what I mean?
Because look, I really think invoking Einstein, it's there's so many solves that can work. You've got to put them in the ring. You've got to put them together and say, does this one add up more or less? If we just want to talk about ideas, that's fine. Like, I'm not super interested in that. I want to find boxes. So I want to know, like, if my idea sucks or it's worse or yours is a lot better, like, I want to know that. And I think the best way to do that is to kind of put them side by side and say, hey, well, this, right? And then I can say, well, look, I think this one's a higher probability, so this one I'm not going to pay attention to anymore.
Then the people vote for it in a non-toxic way. We don't want to lean into the way that it could go. You know what I mean? Nice and wholesome.
Yeah.
You know. I can't hear Eric.
We can't hear you, Eric. You cut out for no sound.
You got excited.
Yeah.
This gets you excited.
It was such earth-shattering news that we shared. No, we still can't hear you.
No, I just had the power.
There it is.
There it is.
They don't understand the backstory. It'd be like if I was standing there and I go, listen, it's not St. Augustine, it's Atlanta because of this statue in this park. Everybody else goes, baloney. They don't know the backstory of why that, and it happens. Yeah. God, people need to realize the stuff in the book is so vague. It's automobiles, it's trees. You got to have something to connect that to, and it's usually not exactly what you think it is, but you have to use the book to make that determination. You have to. I mean, I listen to a lot of the, I don't feel that it's my place. This page was created not by me, by another guy, because he didn't like how people being treated on other pages, and it's not my place to tell anybody else they're wrong. I just listen to what they say and go, yeah. It's like Chuck Knapp. Chuck Knapp just on the page he just showed. I'll show you here on my phone. So when Mark, when you were talking about the tower, and this is a comparison that I've never seen before. So he shows that out of the book.
Yeah.
And could that possibly be the gate that you're seeing in the painting? And what would that represent? Songbird, obviously he's a prisoner, Alcatraz Island. That's exactly how you'd use this information to go, who's the dude? What's this got to do? I was just thinking, that reminds me of a movie, and I think
that's in the book.
It reminds me of an old black and white movie, and I remember the guy had birds. And I think to piss him off or something, they took the birds away from him, and he kind of had a freak out. But I got to go look that up later.
Papillon?
But window imagery of a window, in a story. and just chase it, see where it goes. So I loved it, and I said,
no, I like that. Though.
Like he says, bars on the high window on the rock, and JJP's art is the rock Alcatraz. Oh, the rock. I never even thought of that before. So in the painting, the window's up on a big rock, and that's nickname of the Alcatraz is obviously the rock.
See, so Eric, I think just because you're so heavily into the stories, right? And there's this group of people that the stories don't lead you to the boxes, or there's no clues there.
Yeah,
71%.
One guy, and he's wrong. He's so wrong. And he recently did someone messaged me because I don't something interesting I'll watch, but it's George Ward. Everybody knows it's George Ward. Okay. And they said, someone said, "Oh man, he's doing they're talking about the book now." I said, that's good, because that's where this book was not written for nobody to pay attention. This front of the book, back of the book is a bunch of bullshit. It's the entire book. It's all the photos.
71%.
Everything is you. It's like I need to talk to Ben Asen again. When Karen John did her podcast at the time, she had John Pyrad and Ben Asen on there, and John Pyrad said something about they had dinner with Byron. It was everybody from the book except for Ben. And Ben looks at John and goes, "I wasn't invited to that."
That's funny.
And I'll use New York as an example, so we can spread out to another puzzle. So the way I look at the book, so Ben Asen, who I've talked on the phone many times and asked him questions.
He's great, by the way.
Trying to get in his head. Him, along with everybody else in the book, unless they went like JJP and they were a lookout, he's given them all just little breadcrumbs of information. I've asked Joelle and stuff, and she responded without an answer. And I'm not going to talk about which one that was, but yeah, I will talk about it. Ben Asen laughed when I told him about it. He goes, "Yeah, that's her." But I could tell. It's easy to tell when they, like George did a thing with, and I like watching the interviews he's done with JJP. I just feel like don't ask him a question that he can't answer. You can't say, "Hey man, what the hell is this?" No. If he doesn't say anything, because he knows what that means. He doesn't know where that leads, but he knows where that represents.
Hey, I have often said that I think it's unfair that only one group of people has access to him. And if you might try to ask him a question, you're somehow being disrespectful.
Well, he says he doesn't know anything, but the thing is, it's like, if I took you two guys and I talked to Mark and I said, "Hey, Mark, remember the number 22?" And I said, "Douglas, remember 19?" What? And y'all go, "Well, what does that mean?" I said, "I can't tell you, but it leads to a treasure." And if someone asks you what number you were told, you don't say anything, and you're like, shit, it's 19.
14.
I don't know what the hell 19 means. That's the way
give them the wrong number.
Yeah. And it's because of what happened with Kit Williams and Masquerade, is exactly why Byron did it the way he did. Everybody has a little piece of the pie, and they know what's on that piece of the pie, but they don't get to put it together with everybody else.
Yeah.
See what the actual big picture is. So when I asked Joe Ellen, okay, so using this, and I was already well into New York, and Ben Asen said, for the small businessman story, The Secret, Joe Ellen already told everybody that the doll's a lawyer. He's at the courthouse on Century Street, Manhattan. Byron wanted Ben Asen to go to that spot. So that's your first clue. Why did Byron want Ben to go there? And he said, take a picture in that direction. So Ben Asen took the photo, but Byron wanted the World Trade Center in there, and Ben said, I can't get it at this angle. But, okay, so if you go, he wanted him to stand there and take a photo, and he wanted the World Trade Center in the background. Ben couldn't get it, but Byron put it in the book anyway. But then Ben and Joe Ellen went out on the ferry out there past Battery, took a picture of her with the World Trade Center in the background. So my solve is part Revolutionary War, because that's obviously in the book. The imagery is there, all that other stuff. You get to the small businessman, which is the lawyer on the courthouse steps. That's a clue to a lawyer. Courthouse steps, if you're not familiar with that area, it's basically the Justice Center in front of Thomas Paine Park. The small businessman is Big Tom Foley. So you're looking for the descendant of the fairy. Just because he's an Irish or whatever, the fairy is called the small businessman. So you have Thomas Paine Park, Foley Park, which is Big Tom Foley. What was he in New York? He was a small businessman that did favors for Al Smith, who was running for governor. Then you go to the Spirit of 76. So you got the imagery of Manhattan. And what I asked Jo Ellen, is she a bride? And she responded, that's just something I made from extra material on my desk, which made him laugh. And he said, oh, that sounds like something she'd say. She knew. My feeling is she knew that was a bride, and she intentionally did not answer the question. So if you take lawyer, Justice Center, bride, Justice Center, so that gives you, in the book, hidden is Thomas Paine Park. Hard Words of Three Vols are Common Sense, Rights of Man, and God, I can never remember that third book. They were pamphlets. He was the founding father of the founding fathers. He was the man that spearheaded the Revolutionary War. He wrote speeches of George Washington. That park wasn't put there until 1977, and that's where all the lawyers and jurors hang out at lunch or pre-court in the morning. So in Thomas Paine Park, you had Foley Square, which is gone today, and in Foley Square, you had a bridal garden. So that's your small businessman, Tom Foley, and then the bride is imagery of what was in Foley Square, which was a bridal garden. So if you didn't want to get married in the building, came out there to the bridal garden. And when I figured all that out, I went, is there a bridal garden there? And boom, there it is. So I used those connections in the book with the imagery connections. And this is how he didn't have to use Ben like he used everybody else. He just sent Ben particular place. And Ben's even said some of the photos that are like for the unreal estate brokers. He was in Florida, but he's in South Florida. We know that's St. Augustine. Everybody needs to get past.
Yeah, that's true.
Eloy, St. Augustine, Mendez, the founding of St. Augustine, their relationship, that makes it St. Augustine.
It's in Philadelphia.
Some of the places, Central Park, Byron already said nothing's in Central Park.
Yeah.
So, and Ben said a lot of the photos were taken in New York, even though they're for other cities. We know that the Boogie Woogie Man was taken on his friend's balcony in San Francisco. So some of these places he would travel. When he went to
DC.
Yeah, he would tell Byron, "Hey, we're going out to LA. Oh yeah. Here, take this puppet with you, and get a shot in front of a record store." That's
travel was harder and more expensive back then, right? So
So Eric, he waited when he took off on vacation, and I even think the trip down to South Florida was Ben and his wife Betsy were going on a vacation, and he said, Byron said, find a place that's for sale, and so they found that fence. That's and. On the real estate brokers, if you really dabble in it, it's about Abraham Lincoln. It's connected to Chicago, and Abraham Lincoln, like I said before, everybody knows Civil War, president. He was assassinated, but he also dabbled in real estate. He was friends with the Hawaiian king. He gave out loans to people.
King Kamehameha.
Yeah.
Hey, Eric. So big picture.
And Franklin, the Hawaiian king. Yeah, they were friends. And
so
he did real estate.
Big picture, right? It's like this gets back to what we originally started talking about, which is I posed, hey, how would you do this? So this is just me. I could be totally wrong on this. If I'm Byron and I'm putting these together, I'm going to look, first of all, what cities do I want to highlight here, right? I mean, clearly I'm guessing would have done that. He would have said, hey, here's what. So then what are those interesting stories and places I would like people to go to learn about said history, right? So to me, and there is some debate. I think it's not the majority that look at the stories that you focus a lot on, right? And you probably know the stories, I think probably better than anybody on the planet, okay? But when you think about how these things were created, is it possible the way he conceptualized this was city, places in the city and history, and then these stories come on top of it. See, so I don't think the stories and the illustrations happen first, right? I think he has his place, and he's maybe even buried the box, and these things come afterwards.
Yeah.
So to me, when I'm thinking about developing
I that research, and you started a point and then worked backwards. So
yeah, I'm gonna think about that, and
add the story. So he worked backwards. He had to.
That's right. So, where does he want the box, right? I think that's, if I'm going into a city, I'm thinking in Denver. Okay, here I am in Denver. What are those cool historic places? And yeah, I'm starting backwards, right? So the stories for me, like in New York, and I know Douglas and I disagree on this. This for me, I need the fair people to make that work because so many other things can work. But if you focus on those stories.
You do.
Okay. Now, I didn't use the stories to any large degree in some of these other ones that I've developed. Could be wrong. I don't. But my whole point is, I do think you have to be careful with the stories as well, because I don't think the stories and illustrations and the fair folk lead the puzzle. I think the puzzle location and where he would want you to be is the lead. And from there, he works backwards and creates this narrative and story. And, I think I should start here, right? He doesn't start somewhere and go to a spot and be like, where should I go next? And then hope to end up in a good place, right? So just conceptually, this is why I focus on I use the stories as an additive in New York. It was just through looking through the stories where I'm like, holy cow, if I use this story, I can only be in one place. And that's very definitive. Some of the other stories, though, I do think they're not as informative like the Spotter's Tip. The Spotter's Tip for Spirit of 76 tells you everything you need to know as far as, hey, I need to be a max distance away from the Statue of Liberty. Some of the other Spotter's Tips in the other stories about different cities, they're very vague. I don't think they tell you anything. Now, I could be wrong. So I think it's not like you can apply these stories equally across all puzzles and get the same result. They're you really have to look at them and ask yourself these questions.
See, you find out in the history of Thomas Paine that, it's Thomas Paine. One, he's from the British Isles, the Isle of Be. Two, he was a member of high society. Benjamin Franklin got him to come over here, but he was what the hell? He was the original defender of people that were wronged. Even when he made it to high society, they were telling him at one point, "Hey man, you need to shut up about these writings. It's like you're with us. Those people work for us. We're better than them." And he was like, Thomas Paine actually said, "All I got in the end is my religion, and the good I do." And they shunned him. He got, what would be the equivalent today of getting canceled or blackballed.
Yeah.
So where do you think he shows up, Eric? You think he shows up in New York?
Oh yeah, he's because there's too many nuclear connections. If you Google right now nuclear New York, the only thing, the most significant event in America's history is the invention of the atomic bomb.
Yeah,
that was that started on Broadway in New York City at an office in Broadway. It was called the Manhattan Project because it started in Manhattan. So when you figure out New York is in New York, you got 5 boroughs to go through. But the reason what started the Manhattan Project was a letter. I've said this on other podcasts. Albert Einstein wrote a letter to FDR, but that letter he wrote was inspired by Thomas Paine. It's as simple as that. And when I figured that out, because I went all the way through the Manhattan Project, I mean, every damn facility they got, all the people. There's a website called the Voices of the Manhattan Project that has all the interviews. The Maitre d'Ion is about a French Italian restaurant that used to be on 57th and 5th, where Leslie Groves would meet scientists have dinner with them, try to evaluate them. Then he'd take them for a walk around on 57th to 58th and say, hey, I want you to work for this top secret project for U.S. government developing the atomic bomb. Are you in or are you out? And one of the guys in the interview said it was funny because they got a big wine bar, which is depicted. They had to use the Cheese Cellar restaurant because this actual restaurant was already gone when Byron did the book. It had already been torn down. It got turned into a little parking lot. So that's why he had to use a different restaurant. But you see the wine bar, and the guy said it was funny because General Leslie Groves, he didn't like Italian or French food, and he sure as hell didn't drink. So he said, I was wondering why we were there. So he'd pitch it to him around the block, you know, and it, of course, this was a top secret operation. But Albert, I went all the way to the end, and I went, this is making no sense. And I mean, it takes you to Berkeley. And I knew it. I started with Albert Einstein, but then I had to go, and I'd go, you know, Einstein was a German. You know, they claim he never worked on the Manhattan Project because of his liberal views and the fact that he used to be German. But he denounced his German citizenship. He took a job at Princeton in New Jersey, and I went all over Princeton. I tore that place down. And I was like, there's absolutely nothing. I was getting so pissed with New York. I was like, so there's some statues, but some of them are modern, some of them are old. Thomas, I hadn't even come to Thomas Paine, but then I find this thing that Albert Einstein says I wrote when he got together with his 100 scientists. He had denounced his German citizenship. He took that job. He already knew about the German. The Germans called it the super weapon. And there's a pamphlet you can see on Google. On their pamphlet they had for it, it shows Manhattan with these ring bomb sites on it. That's what they were going to hit if they had created it. The thing with the Germans were a lot of it was anti-Jew stuff. They didn't trust the Jews, and they wanted the Germans to develop it. These guys were not smart enough. So like depicted in the movie, he says, oh, the Germans are already months ahead of us. He said, no, they're not, because they don't have the right damn people. And you see the depiction, you know, Einstein, Oppenheimer. They didn't trust him. These people couldn't get clearance. The second he was successful detonating Trinity at Los Alamos, the military swooped in and took it all away from Oppenheimer. And he was like, what the hell? And they're like, no, we just needed you to make it. Now we don't need you no more. We know.
Hey, Eric, I'm sorry. I got a boogie.
You got to go?
I got boogie. Yeah, sorry. We got to get to choir practice.
Oh, brother.
Well, you know, you in the secret.
Yeah, I need prayers, please. All right, so just I think the bigger picture, big picture thing that I think of is, okay, if there's information in the Fair Folk story, which I think there are, Douglas, you agree with that, right, or no?
Yeah, I'm not a book. I don't look for the clues myself. I listen to gentlemen like you, and I know that there's something there because in my research, it's been coinciding. You can't deny it. It's there. You know what I mean?
So I think the popular notion is, and that only makes sense to me. 71% of the book is Fair Folk. I added it up. It's 71%. So the chances of it not being leading to some stuff. So I think the challenge in the stories are, we know the stories aren't everything, right? And so how do you sift through interesting, cool, fun stuff in that the whole reason why Fair Folk exists? And where, you know, how do we parse through all those stories and get to those, you know, little clues that can lead us to the box, you know? So that's what I'm always thinking of with these stories myself, is like, I know not all the information is relevant. So then how do we sift through, right? And I would argue to you that those stories, they're all over the place, and some are very descriptive and very distinct and hey, this is what you have to do or where you have to be, and oftentimes it's not. So I think that's a big challenge with the stories themselves, is how do we sift through them to just pull out what is going to help us get to the box, because there's a lot of cool, interesting connections and things in there. I've only found, like in New York, that they were really useful to me personally, but you know, but these interconnections that you know about, Eric, are and how that ties back to all the immigrant groups.
Well, New York is the most.
But I do have to run, guys. I'm really sorry.
All right, man. Mark, we'll see you next. You'll be on
All
next
right,
time.
good seeing you guys.
All right, guy. So yeah, so New York is, plus 11. The hour starts with 12, so I've always felt that 12 is the. Let me change the screen here. The 12 is the easiest one. 11 is the hardest, and 11 has the most fairies. The book says you need pairs of fairies, and in New York it's only pairs because it has to do with the war. It basically involved everybody.
Yeah,
and that's basically what you get. But when I did that back, I just went after Einstein, and I was like him and FDR. And right after he sent that letter to FDR, that's when FDR got with the Pentagon and said, we need to develop this first. And that's basically everything else was history. We got the bomb first. Germany lost. We dropped it on Japan. All that. The imagery is it's subtle and it's incredibly vague. Like the woman floating, she's Lady Justice, lady with Lady Liberty's face, but her body is Lady Justice. And there's my brother. You got, boy, his timing is epic. And you got the waves, you got the little dots. Those are atoms. But in the book, you see Geiger counters, nuclear.
Yeah,
my books in my car, but I'm like, you can't. And the main one, the German, that you got everybody's involved, German, British, all that stuff. Churchill, you got all these players. Emperor of Japan, the Russians, Stalin.
Yeah.
But the main focus is that event of, we won the war, and that's why. So you got World War II in New York. You got Revolutionary War, World War II. It's in the words, but it's
I think the Civil War is in all of them as well.
Yeah. He's throwing them crying. A lot of that stuff is I think a lot of the stuff Byron just wants you to learn is just. It's like when Palancar called him and said, "Hey man, they changed the name of this road to MLK." Oh yeah, good. That'll just make it harder. That's his whole concept. You'll go off on this history and you'll learn all this stuff and you realize it really goes nowhere. So where are you going to come back to that path you were on, and you're going to keep what's next? But I always tell people, look at those keywords, and then you'll see a lot of keywords, all the baseball stuff in San Francisco that leads to basically a pitcher. Even that there's a lamp. Lamp could be misconstrued as a pitcher. Water, using like a water pitcher to, not that kind of pitcher, but baseball pitcher. Same word, different meanings.
Yeah. Well, was Mark talking about that when he was showing that thing that was renovated? That was San Francisco for him.
Yeah. See, I know the history of that mountain. So, you had the first Spanish explorer came by. They mapped that out. The map guy said Golden Gate. They call it the entrance. He called it a Golden Gate. They didn't want to go in there. That water outside that gate is incredibly deep. They didn't know that. They didn't want to go in there. Second explorer, they actually climbed up. They were also Spanish. I think one was Balboa. I can't remember the other two. They actually climbed up there and looked, and they actually saw San Francisco Bay. The third explorer that came, they actually went up in there.
I know somebody that thinks it's at the San Francisco Zoo, and I don't agree with that.
No,
I think they're wasting their time over there and potentially ruining grounds, digging. Yeah. I mean, it was with permission, but still, it's a waste of time in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there's people on here I'm not familiar with, but if you're new to The Secret, you're not going on anybody's private property. Fountain of Youth, we're looking at city parks, gardens, squares, any damn name for a public park. That's no private property, no Fountain of Youth, no Wright Brothers Memorial. People have already been arrested out there. Don't go out there with no damn shovel.
You're absolutely right.
I would just go up to the White House with a shovel and see if you can get away with that.
It's right at hand, the White House.
Yeah, he's not going to do anything that's going to get you arrested. Byron was
Right.
a Boy Scout. He wouldn't be breaking in the Fountain of Youth in the middle of the night.
Yeah, he was taking enough chances.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard enough just going in the parks, without, that's why he was wearing the, the little get up. So if anybody did, even if, somebody, there's always someone around that goes, hey man, I work for the park department. Who the hell's that clown?
Yeah.
Hey man, I'm just surveying. If they see you looking official, they usually ain't going to say nothing. It's like, you ain't going to sit there and see, hey, that guy's dressed as a cop. Let's go see if he's a real cop. And nobody's going to do that.
When I worked across the street from White Point Gardens, part of my job was to call the cops on some weird stuff I'd seen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And go break up digging, whatever.
We got some questions. Let's go over some of these. Oh, let me go back far enough. Anybody on the X? Yeah, I used to be, but I killed that, getting too much spam. I have a Facebook page, 12 Puzzles Podcast page, Facebook page, if you're not a member of that. Someone says, curious, are you more interested in the histories or the casks? Well, some of the city's history is on the side of the box. The top of the box is St. Augustine. He says, yes, for which location? If you're talking about the Facebook page, we do all the puzzles on one page. In our place, in our time, the location selected. Yep, that's right. My brother called. What park do you like in New York? I'm in Thomas Paine Park. It was in the Bridal Garden at Foley Square. That's what I came to. That place, there was renovations in there in 2000, and they completely destroyed that whole area, dug it down to the subway, and Spirit of Freedom, I think, statue is there. The park's completely redone, cast, destroyed.
Yeah, I'm at Riverside.
And where?
I'm at Riverside Park. At Riverside Park, I did a big video. You can catch it on his page too. It's 40 minutes long, and you'll get more in that from me talking about it. But I definitely think it's in Riverside Park for sure.
And he says he's got it there on X for all the remaining puzzles. I mean, I haven't even. I'm still about to pull my damn hair out about Milwaukee. But I think Milwaukee is about. I think Milwaukee is about the women that worked in the factories during World War II. That's the car references. That's Nash, all that. The Detroit and Michigan's both mentioned. It might, and if Byron plays the puzzles a little differently, this might be a start Milwaukee into Detroit puzzle. That's always a possibility.
How close is it?
It's Detroit and Michigan, and the American Motor Gremlins. That's something that started in Milwaukee. Then Harley Davidson, Racine, but Harley Davidson basically started in Milwaukee. Nash Motor Cars, Daimler, they're the ones that AMC and built the Gremlin car. That's why the American Motor Gremlins. But the woman imagery, then when you get into, I was doing some research on that, and a lot of these women they were interviewing that were working during the war effort. So these women were building plane parts, just tools of war, Jeeps, all this kind of stuff. Women stayed behind, the men went out and off and fought. And it kind of makes sense. Like Byron did a story about women. And also there's a Teddy Roosevelt connection to that because everybody knows he was doing a campaign in Milwaukee and he got shot in the chest by an assassin while standing in the back of a car. So you got a lot of automobile imagery talking about a lot of automobiles, but also with MacArthur and all that mentioned, just like the Civil War for Chicago and Houston, where we have the North and the South. You got World War II was two battlefronts. So you had Europe and the Pacific is where MacArthur was. So these, all this, once the war in Europe ended, if you've ever seen Band of Brothers, a lot of them were talking about, I'm going to the Pacific Theater.
Yeah, good show. Yeah, I mean, it's like all the nice little secret gems of history. You know what I mean? So
in Milwaukee,
together.
Milwaukee might be MacArthur because he actually lived there. But it's where his statue is now. There's a place. It's like a block from the damn Mitchell House. This old park, and I just saw about a month ago they're getting ready to demolish that park and completely renovate it.
Oh no, that's not good.
A bunch of planters out there, and I said, "This is where his statue used to be. Yeah, when it was dedicated, but they moved it to the shore."
You need to get that construction company's name and tell them that you're looking for a box.
I got something good coming up good for a podcast. I'm tracking down the operator guy from Boston. I want to know exactly where he was digging when he saw the plexiglass piece, so I could prove to everybody that the cast was behind the plate.
Yeah, to me, like,
I'm not going to bring him on. I just want to ask him where did you start digging and when did you notice the plexiglass? Because I know he was digging and he turned and dumped, and I said, "You saw him out."
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, them digging it up, he could be mistaken. He could definitely be mistaken to where he saw this or where it was up because it was in pieces and stuff.
And did you see that? Did you say? Well, I mean, it's something with George, but I'll bring it up. The Boston meetup with Jason Krupat, they put the pieces of the cask in a box and left it on a park bench at Lincoln Park for like 2 days, just sitting out in the open.
Yeah.
And then the guy, I don't know, the manager or whatever, he said he came over and he saw the pieces and he said, "Oh, I wonder if that's that crap them guys were looking for." But I said, "Oh man, it's just sitting there on the bench." So anybody, because a lot more happened other than what we saw on the show. But
I mean,
I want to know exactly where that guy was digging because I
know a lot of guessing going on.
Do what?
There's a lot of guessing on the Boston one going on because it's really hard to tell if when the guy dug it up, where he dug it up. There's a lot of tangibles, and it seems like everybody's like been like, all right, it's got to be near home. JJP said, he had the base. He pointed out the base to everybody, but I never actually heard him say that it was definitely near it. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, what you can see on the show, and see, that's what I want to know what from the time. They had found that there was a delay in getting a hold of Jason Krupat. And then, he had to contact Josh Gates, and then they came to do the show. But on the show, you could see pretty much where he started digging. But see, I go off that theory where, Krupat said he was out there before Jason. They said, they roped off a little area so he could keep searching for more of it. I bet there are pieces of that cask laying on. You go out to that field after a good rain, I bet you'll see pieces of the cask like everywhere. Unless they took that dirt and removed it and brought in fresh dirt, I'd find out where they took all that dirt that he dug up. They might have not reused it. It might have been mixed with dirt. I would go.
I don't know. There's a lot of things there.
Records and say, where did these dump trucks go? Where did they go dump this? If they dumped it in a roadway or something for paving, it's gone.
Well, and he would have had to really buried it really good on a baseball field if he was going to do it on a baseball field. People are going to use that. You know what I mean?
No, that's why I think he buried it right where the catcher and umpire stood. That was the only disturbed ground.
Yeah.
If he raked off the top, I played around helping redo baseball fields a few times. You got
right near the backstop area.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a line back there. So, and basing that off, if you go to the painting and you look at how home plate is on our sleeve, if you go to Langone Park and you find north and you lay the compass on it and you stand behind it looking at north, it's exactly like it is in the painting. So that puts the 8 o'clock dial right where the catcher and the umpire are somewhere behind them. And I think it's where the catcher and umpire are, because those areas are never smooth. They always got to rake them. The batter's boxes where first, second, third baseman, shortstop stand and in the pitcher mound.
Technically, somebody could get hurt if he buried that out in the active field somewhere where people are running.
Yeah. It was pushed that it was out in front of home plate, and I'm like, no. Because before they have a game there, the park people show up and check the field. and they would have said, "Who the hell dug a hole right here?" He wouldn't be able to hide that.
Especially
if the field
like
dry,
the bases are all anchored down, correct? Like, and you can't like bury it underneath.
Yeah, the bag's got a pole. It's a pole buried in the ground.
Yep.
Because that's a very, very, very laid out process. The distance between the bags and everything. That diamond all the way down to the corner poles. Like taking that to San Francisco. High posts of 3. There's only 3 high posts on a baseball field. Your two foul pole markers and pitcher's mound. Those are the only 2 high spots on the whole field. Let's see. How many X's do you have? X's, I hope you mean dig spots. I have one for every remaining puzzle except for Milwaukee that I'm still not wanting to work on.
I got like 4 or 5 of them. I still haven't gotten to some of the other ones. Like, I got to focus on like Milwaukee. Probably be one of the last ones I get to. I'm still working on the getting into California right now.
He says, "How likely do you think it would be for one person to find the rest?" Well, I've always had this theory that I push to everybody. The book is designed for you. When you complete the puzzle, which you can do from home, it gives you an area or a spot to go dig. That's when you start going to probe, dig, see if you can probe or dig. Things were different in 1982 as they are now. Most of that, and every city knows about the secret now, and every single city will throw you in jail. San Francisco is about the only single one. I know you cannot dig. I think it's in Mount Royal Park in Montreal. People get run out of there every single night. And I know a guy that was up there, and he said he tried to stay there after dark, and they knew he was there and came up and told him to get the hell out. I think about New Orleans. New Orleans is probably the easiest one. You can go in and jerk around. No one's really going to pay attention. A lot of it's security. A lot of it, we got all these. The homeless problem in this country is ridiculous. Golden Gate Park, San Francisco.
And it was bad in '81 too.
Pretty relaxed. I walked around Charleston. The only thing is don't there's a Charleston's got a rat. There's a secret rat in Charleston. Don't live stream from there. Don't announce you're at White Point Gardens because the damn police are going to show up. No one knows.
That's what I used to work at doing. That was my job at night.
I watched a guy live streaming, and he was like, he got off, and he said the cops came up. They knew who he was. They said, "Hey, you so and so? Yeah, someone called and said you're in here digging." And it's like,
well, yeah, that's what people just don't dig at White Point Gardens. It's entirely filmed at night with night vision cameras, the top of the line cameras, and it was ran by people like me, watching people all night. So you see every inch of that park.
It's there. You're going to step in a ton of goose shit. There's Washington Park has got people all in it. Tours. There's cameras in there too.
Lots of cops.
Don't go in there and tear anything up. No. If you don't know where it's at, don't dig. And oh God, I know a guy went into, I ain't gonna say what park in Charleston. He had I didn't even know they made one of these. It's a probe so you can determine how packed the soil is.
Oh wow.
He said 200 on Washington Park. 200. It takes you all day to get a shovel digging in that park. That's how packed the ground is there. I was like, dang, I've heard of them before. And usually if your soil, this is when you need to go in and have an aerator put in your yard. The soil is so packed the roots can't even go through it. So your grass just dies. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. He goes, dude, I did 2 spots. And he said it was over 200. And I was like,
see, in my opinion, I think JJP knows where they are. I know he doesn't want to tell people, but that's not cool.
He gave up stuff when he told people that he was with Byron in Cleveland. He should. Yeah. That's what started the barrage after him, which I know he did get sick of it. And that's when he tells people, "I don't know nothing," he doesn't know anything. And like he even said, he was at Cleveland. He said, I'm looking around. He said, Byron disappeared. He said, then Byron showed up and he goes, okay, man, you can dig. Byron said, I already buried it. And you go, oh, okay. So he didn't even know where Byron buried it per his story.
Well, I'm seeing that the artist techniques that he's using and the stuff that he's using with art is telling me he knows at least the park where it's at.
Yeah,
for sure.
And we get another clue out of that too, because I've heard that Byron asked every creator of the book to give him something. So we know JJP was from Cleveland, right?
Right.
And he knows he painted the Greek Gardens. So possibility, track down more people and see where they're from or see where they got some history at.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like who was it? Sean Kelly, in the guy's book. It's really Toronto. Well, see, he writes comics, so I don't believe him for a second. I think he just like, man, that's really going to screw everybody. He might have wrote about Toronto, but there's a lot of people out there. I'm like, listen, the YMCA is your biggest clue to Montreal, the Expos, the first baseball team, the first YMCA, everything else. I don't even want to go over. Montreal is the 222 is religious. That's why it's your starting point is to cross. Then you go south to Whitestone closest, and then you got to walk out the paces. Because the standing member of a forest is a standing steel cross member cross. It's made of cross members. The 222 also has a steel reference.
I'm somewhere totally different in the Canada one. I'm over in Chambly, Montreal. Chambly, Montreal was the first official St. Louis in North America, and that's where I think it's at. It's a park. There's a park right next to it, and it's not the first time he used forts. He's got Fort Sumter in Charleston, and that's where I believe it's at. Somewhere over there.
So John Smith said no home plate. Yeah, we know home plate. Feel at home. He just left plate off. That's wordplay. But he couldn't bury it directly on a home plate because there's a base and a pole under there. The home plate has a dowel on it that sticks right down into this hole of this plate that's buried in the dirt. All baseball got them.
Have you heard of these anti-wordplay people? People that don't think that there's a lot to do with wordplay in the verse and stuff. Like, of course, there's like
that's exactly how you hide stuff.
Yeah. Isn't it? I was like, that's how you make a coded treasure hunt with wordplay.
What we were talking about earlier, like if you say Fortress North, you can change that wordplay on Fortress. You say building north, house north, structure north.
Hey,
what is a fortress? If you brung a guy there and he said, "Oh my God, what kind of fortress is that?" What was a fortress reference? Military structure, a very big building. That's what they'd call a fortress, like a castle. Most castles were called fortresses.
Hey, off topic. I've heard a rumor of a big movement that's going on. They believe that the Boston verse in image gives you clues for the New York one. I don't believe it.
Yeah.
But that's their argument for why they think New York is also in a baseball field. They think there's baseball fields it's baseball fields that we need to be looking for.
Yeah, we know who started that baseball field crap. That's Boston never used baseball. He used home plate.
Yeah.
Green Tower is the Charles Towers prison, and it only lit up green. And I've heard people go, "No, the Green Tower lights. That's the green wall at Fenway." And I'm like, "It's a wall. That's not a tower." I said the Green Tower lights. So Sacco Vanzetti, there's a plaque to them guys inside the Langoni's funeral home. That was, even Josh Gates would know about this event. At Charlestown Prison, that was a big event, and it was right across the river on the other side of the bridge from Langone Park. And then when they lit up that tower at night, it had green glass in the top. And the only time they lit up that tower is when they're executing somebody. And
well, these guys point to like the Xenophon and the other thing, how that's like Boston and New York, and that quote from Walpole and all that stuff. They're saying that's why it's in a baseball field in New York. It just doesn't make any sense.
No, I mean they're doing that same crap in Roanoke. I don't want to hear from that Spencer Parks Department guy anymore. Out there digging up the baseball fields. Yeah, there's baseball. There's baseball in the book. If you think it's in New York, look. If you do this, you go to Team Spirits, you see guys wearing New York Yankees baseball, and that's talking about all bunch of sports, but the imagery is showing all baseball. So that's how you follow that from San Francisco, New York. I don't know. I don't want to be mean people. Some theories, some of these theories, they're just pulling straight out of the air. There's no. That'd be if I sat here and say no. It's this. It's this pyramid they built in 1960 here in Jacksonville. Someone ought to go. Why? Why are you there? Where in the book is? Where in the book? If it's not in the book telling you to go there, then how in the hell are you at this spot? Oh, because I think it looks. No, it's way. There's so many people that believe this is so easy. I hear, can't you just use the painting? No, you cannot. You're going to have to really know history, and you're going to have to be from New York. You're going to have to be from Roanoke Island. You're probably going to have to be from New York and worked up at the Justice Center, the courthouse. There's something.
Yeah.
There's two versions of this. You got locals that would go, oh, like Rob and them did in Chicago. Hey, that's the water tower, man. They just put windmill blades on it. Yeah. Me and you would have never known that unless we looked it up. Oh, okay, it is the water tower. But they were kids. They went by there multiple times as kids. They were probably in Grant Park.
Yep. They recognized something in the image.
Yeah, they even said, we grabbed the book and we took off. Hey, we've been down there a million times. Let's go down there and look around. Me not being from Chicago and only being there once in my life, I wouldn't know any of that stuff. That's what people need to realize. Byron, the back of that book, Byron gives you a sheet to fill out. You would not even have to go and probe or dig. And Byron said, you tell me exactly and precisely how you got here. And that's using the book. So we got to break this. This has been going on long enough. This is my opinion piece. These people that telling you don't need the book. There's the front and the back of the book. The publisher didn't originally want to publish the book because there weren't enough pages and Byron put more in there. That doesn't necessarily mean Byron put them in the back of the book either. He could have mixed them like a deck of cards.
Yeah.
You need the entire book. Some of the stories I've come across, they don't leave the jack squat. There's the left wing Trog and the right wing whatever. That's the story of why there's a North and South Dakota, because that's exactly what it says on page. And it leads to nothing. It's a story. If you ever wondered why the hell there's a North and South Dakota, it's because they didn't agree on politics. And they said, well, we're gonna form a state and we're gonna do this. And they said, the hell you are. We want to do this. And they said, no, we're not budging. We're not either. So, okay, so you guys do the North and we'll do the South. And boom, North and South Dakota were born. I never found any correlation to any other puzzle. You got a lot of the stories that say Washington, D.C. That we got. The book tells you're looking for the descendant of the fair folks. I think there's 74 different fairies listed stories in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But page 10, you're not playing with all the fairies. So Byron's giving you, it's going to be a combination of those 12 with every story. Do you need 2? Do you need 4? The book gives you the first one for every single one. When Mark was talking earlier about how did Byron start? Well, you could see. Because everybody told their own history, even back before the immigration to North America. The Spanish, we only know by records that they were in St. Augustine before anybody else was here. They're just figuring out today the Vikings were here before anybody was, right?
Yep, that's right.
Even all the way around in New Orleans. So the Spanish, they got claim to St. Augustine, and historically, 1516. That's the oldest founding place. But then if you ask the British, they're going, bull crap. We were at Roanoke Island, and then Jamestown, and Puritans were in Boston. The first mass immigration of the Chinese was to San Francisco, California, because of the gold rush. This is the kind of stuff you need to learn. Houston, Texas was the Middle Eastern, Persian, Araby, all that junk. That part of the United States, Texas, was a desert. That's the reason Byron used all that connection.
I
but
agree
you
with
got to
that.
figure out, what does it all mean? What's Araby? And when I figured out it was Irish, I looked up Araby. Yeah, James Joyce, the author, he pops up. He actually wrote a book called Araby. So that's just a clue that you're looking for Irish. And then you got to learn about the Irish. The Irish are the Scottish. So if you see a Scottish story in the book, it's got to do with either Houston or Chicago. So I think one says Scottish.
Yeah.
But that's also a trick in the book because that's also Irish. And if you see a story that says just Irish, like the Leprechaun Man, we know the Leprechaun's Irish. Then I've always asked the questions, well, if you want to play with the Leprechaun Man and St. Patty's Day and all the other crap, why the hell is that why is the emerald, which you'd put the emerald with the Irishman with the four-leaf clover, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you got Boston, where Byron used the Italian British, and then he took the emerald to Chicago and gave it to the Scotsman, and then gave the ruby to the Irishman in Houston, Texas. Yeah, you see how he's playing it?
Yeah.
So if you had to go, one of the fairies is Irish, what city do you go to? Like, Bob, I'll take Chicago. He's like, no, not Chicago. And you're like, why not? Because you really got to dabble into the history. And I was talking with Mark earlier. The first settlers to Houston, Texas were led there by Stephen Austin. He is the man who Austin, Texas is named after. He was an Irishman. Almost half of the settlers that came with him were Irish. Sam Houston was Irish. Dick Dowling is also Irish. And Dick Dowling, at his time, he was the most famous Irishman in Houston. He was a celebrity. Texas was part of the Confederacy. He was held up just like General Grant was. And Abraham Lincoln was by the North.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. You just I'd never heard of Dick Dowling. I mean, look at the Leprechaun Man, the foam. You can see the island. That's Sabine Pass. You look at Sabine Pass on the map. The columns in the painting are also cannons. One of them's a water tower. That's how it connects to Chicago. Different kind of water tower. You got to know all that history. I just can't explain all that. But once you go down through all that, and then I remember when I found Dick Dowling, I went, no shit. This is why no one's got this, because it's down and you got to literally walk way the hell down there to the other end of the park, and no one's going down there to look at one statue. It's a walk past the zoo, come around that roadway. You walk down the golf courses over to your left. You're almost at the highway. Dick Dowling's on the right, and it's the south of the Houston's the South Confederacy story of the Civil War. And Dick Dowling, his statue was put at the south end for a reason, because it's the South, and he was a Confederate. And, since then, he had a school named after him. He had a Lions Club at St. Mountains Pass. The lion in the painting, Lions Club. It's called the Dick Dowling Lions Club. Ulysses Grant's got one named after him, too. The school, the street, his statue were all changed and removed. Washing history, because he was a Confederate. War's war.
Yeah.
But agenda stepped in and, and took out history and all that kind of stuff. So if you look in there, And the book tells you you're looking for the ancestors of the fairy. So if the fairy's called the Irishman, you're looking for an Irishman. And Dick Dowling was born in Ireland. His family immigrated to Louisiana, and when he got of age, he moved to Texas and joined the military. So Dowling went from Louisiana to Texas, and the train that was bought by the Louisiana-Texas Railroad renamed it 982, and it ran goods from Houston to Galveston to Sabine Pass. And that's the same path to cities that Dick Dowling took. That's why different timelines there. You know, Dick Dowling was long dead before 982 train became the 982 train. But see, things have changed today because Dowling's gone. The train's not there anymore. There's a lot of stuff in the painting. It's not exactly Palancar's doing that. You see columns, go to the north end of Herman Park and look at the column structure that's up there.
So you're talking about in Houston.
Yeah, take the heart to the heart doctor. Take the rhino head and camel to the zoo. Dowling's not pictured in the painting. You know, the desert imagery. The only thing that's pictured of the city of Houston is the grid on the ground. If you look at the first map drawing of Houston, it looks exactly like that. But the topic is the Civil War, and it's the topic of artillery officer. The ruby's red. He wore red as an artillery officer. There's so many connections historically, but everybody needs to get into the book. Start at the beginning of the book. Byron gives you instructions. He's giving you the first fairy. He tells you need 2. The fairies do everything in 2s or pairs. So he's telling you one puzzle, you're going to need the fairy I gave you plus another one. Or in other stories, you're going to need pairs of fairies.
I've heard people that use that for like everything. Oh, there's got to be twos to, what I mean, to validate themselves.
It's the entire basis. When I figured out, I first read the book and I was like, "What in the hell is this? I don't get it." The only thing about so the secret book is fiction, but it's really not. The only thing that's fiction in the secret book is the fairies.
Yeah,
but they represent real immigration.
Yeah.
So it's not really. It's got a fictional character in it, but this book is it's a nonfiction historical treasure hunt. That's pretty much what it is. Just don't worry about the fairies. Some of the stories, what you were talking about earlier, I'll say like this. So what I found, St. Augustine, Spanish, the book gives you. The second is German. It's the only 2 you need to solve the puzzle. New Orleans, French, British, Benjamin Franklin. Franklin, he was born a Brit. Got African and I think French also. This area of French, British, all that's in there, but it's nothing major. The French were in St. Augustine. The Spanish were in St. Augustine. And this isn't at its founding. The Africans were there. Civil rights movement. That's also supposedly at the dig location. So some of the fairies might have small contributions. Charleston, you got African British. Most of the secondary fairies in America are going to be British, obviously, because we had 13 British colonies here.
Yeah.
Montreal's Dutch British, because they're British, Canadian, French Canada, British Canada. Boston was Irish. I'm not Irish. It was Italian British because Paul Revere.
Yeah.
The anti-Italian sentiment of the time. That's why North Boston was British before it became Italian. Basically, put it that way. Paul Revere was
historical note. In 1981, during all that mafia crime, there was a lot of Italians in the North End.
Sure.
Right then.
Sure. Well, El Sacco Vanzetti, you can tie him in because every Italian back then, when people ran into Italians, they thought they were all criminals.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Italians' fault. You had a little bit of the Greek, the mafia, the Sopranos. They talk about being from Italy. It's the way these people were treated. They weren't given nothing. Half of them were starving to death. So what did they have to do? They had to resort to crime just to feed their family. I mean, The Godfather shows you that. You got one guy walk around the neighborhood, kiss my ring, and he's stealing money from everybody. And then Don Corleone goes and puts bullets in him and then treats everybody differently. I'm not going to overcharge you. But that's a very likable character. People love the mob, but when you look down to it, a lot of these people were just doing what they had to do to survive. And that's gone on forever in all these other countries with the British Crown and all that kind of stuff. So you can't really blame people, but when you had the people that were already here, which were most of them were converted Brits, and if you ever been to some of these countries like I have, these people don't care. That they think you're beneath them no matter where you come from if you're not British, prim proper. Don't speak right, whatever the heck it is, This is the reason people. Yeah, this is the reason people moved into that's why you have a Chinatown, a Little Italy. People moved around their own people that they were comfortable with, and they knew they weren't getting shaken down and getting their ass beat, and being in neighborhoods where they're not supposed to be.
So and in Boston, when that big molasses tragedy happened, it was Italians living up there at that time.
Yeah, that's right next door to Langone Park. All this stuff is right in the area, including Paul Revere.
Yeah, yep. You got to know the history. The history is where it's at.
And you can go. I can tell people you can go right into the book. I'm trying to remember what it said. It tells you in the book. It says the first battle. Or it says something like, just ask the first British general that lost a battle. That's the Battle of Concord and Lexington. Who was involved with that? So Concord and Lexington, those battles occurred northwest of Boston. Paul Revere was riding up through there. He got caught in the middle of both of them. There's another guy that continued to ride. But Paul Revere was actually captured. So, and then if we'd ever figured out that she was a witch in the painting, that would have had us in Salem. That's the part of the painting. That's what I would have liked to ask Palancar. Why did you not paint her to look like an actual witch? She has nothing that makes you go on the show when he goes, she's a witch. And I was like, what? Where's the green skin, the hat, the broom? Yeah, not that kind of witch. Not a Wizard of Oz witch, but what they actually looked like back in the day to Salem witch trials. But I was like, I don't know how anybody's supposed to make that determination.
I got an actual theory on that.
Go ahead.
I got a theory on that. I believe that every single image has something to do with a book. Like Don Quixote's on one of them.
Yep.
The lion, that's the one from the wardrobe. Like all these old books. And I see that, like, also, she would be Jaden the White Witch. Look, she got big hands. She's the Frost Witch in that image. So she is a witch, but it's from a fiction book.
Yeah. Yeah.
JJP did more work than people think he did. He did his whole art mumbo jumbo on it.
Yeah, and he's mixing a bunch of different histories. So you got the Italians from North Boston. You got Paul Revere. When anybody on the page sees me type or talk about timelines, you're not looking for one specific. Paul Revere, when the Italians came and, it took up North Boston. And even today, things have changed. Charlestown Prison ain't there anymore. Langonis, their funeral home, I think someone else owns it. So it's like, you got to look at the Sacco Vanzetti story. They've actually done movies about that. I talked to a guy I had on a private ride. He was like, everybody in Boston knows that story. The Langonis did their funeral. It created worldwide outrage in like 19, was it 1920, 1922 or something like that. And these guys are basically executed because they were targeted. They were targeted because they were Italian. And they said later the police, one of the guys they suspected of doing it, he popped up 8 years, I think in 1928, he popped up back in Italy. And the Italian authorities took him into custody. And he said, I have any idea who the hell those two guys were.
Hey, and if you notice, there is a lot of 1920s history running through this thing. 1920s to 1930. Right in there, there's a lot of history that he's covering because maybe it's forgotten. People forgot, you know what I mean? A lot of that history.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And now I know it probably because of him, but I do a lot. I watch a lot of history shit. So, you know, I was already up on history. That's why this is attractive to me. You know what I mean?
One of the movies, I recognize the actor. I think he was in A Fistful of Dollars with Clint Eastwood back in the 60s. But there's a 70s. I've meant to sit down and actually watch that movie. I think every damn night we sit down and try to find something to watch on Netflix or something. I'd have my wife look that up. Because they got arrested, and I think like Vinzetti had some shotgun shells on him. Sacco had a pistol, but it was the wrong caliber. And what it was, I think it was a shoe company. There was a security guard and their accountant, and they had a cash box, and they got robbed. And they shot and killed the accountant and the security guard. They didn't know who did it at first, but these people, of course, people come up, people running their mouth. The cops are going around harassing everybody. They picked them up, and they're like, the guns they have that weren't even used in the robbery. And they said the entire time we didn't do nothing. And they were just public outrage. Somebody, majority of the people in the town probably weren't they probably weren't Italian, and the people in control of the city were probably, British descent or people that did not like Italians. So they're like, listen, we just need to shut everybody up and close this case and blame it on someone.
Yeah.
But there was protests in Japan, Australia. Now this is the 1920s.
Wow.
This story went worldwide. It was a massive news event, and they were taken over to Charlestown, and they were both executed.
Well, and this is the type of stuff that's important to the secret. This kind of hidden history that like what you like that happened, that kind of stuff.
And the guy told me it's one of the biggest stories in the history of Boston. So why would Byron not use it? Yeah. And they're Italian, so Byron gives you the Italian. Then you got to figure out what's the second ferry. So the Italians, the Sacco and Vincetti, and the Langonis, with the Boston history of Paul Revere, puts you right there on the street at Langoni Park.
That's right.
Plain and simple. Now, if you go to San Francisco, see, so Mark Twain, the Chinese like groups of San Francisco asked him to be his mayor because he stuck up for Chinese people, just like how Thomas Paine stuck up for people that were being wronged. You could see the Langonis did it. Mark Twain did it in San Francisco. Of course, Mark Twain declined to be their mayor, but that was the same thing that happened to Sacco and Vanzetti in Boston because they were Italian. Was the same crap happening to the Chinese in San Francisco that were coming over from the gold rush. They were just making them workers. They were cleaning shirts. The women were working as prostitutes. They wouldn't let the Chinese or any of the Asians buy any land to go out. They were there for the same reason. They wanted to pan for gold and silver. Same thing that drew Mark Twain out there. And they were like, no, we've passed ordinances. You people can't. Even the movie Horizon with Kevin Costner that kind of flopped. They showed that. They showed that scene. He's out in that area, and the guy goes, well, I don't want any of you Asian people. Get out of here. Don't come back tomorrow. He was just trying to give work for the white people, and all the Asians are there in these little tent camps, and they're part of the they're part of that immigration thing, but they're trying to make it too. But the way the Irish were treated, anything. I mean, even in the Civil War, there was Irish regiments. There was a bunch in New York. There was one in Georgia for the Confederacy, and I remember a Union general talked about it. He's like, damn. It's like that scene in The Patriot with Mel Gibson when the king says, send the Irishmen. And they start running over the walls and they run out. They're going to kill each other. And then they all start hugging. I A Union general said, "Man, I wonder when we face the Confederate Irish regiment, are they actually going to fight?" He was scared they're all going to, like, "Hey, what's up, brother?" No, they really fought. They like killed the hell out of each other, and he said he was scared that they were going to not do what they were, they weren't going to fight.
Yeah,
because they're no Irishmen. But he said, hell, they killed the hell out of each other.
Yeah, I mean, also it's the same thing down in St. Augustine with the Indians, the Native Americans. They had to make the forts for those guys. You know what I mean? Like the stories are a theme. There's a theme in all the stories. It's not always going to be the best things happening, but it doesn't mean it's all negative.
It's the world of conquering. Yeah, the Native, that's depicted in the Horizon. And I told my wife in the theater, I said, "Oof, Native American community is not going to like this." She goes, "Why?" I said, "Because this is being politically." Yeah, it was showing in the movie Horizon with Kevin Costner. There's supposed to be a part 2 in October, but right at the end of the movie, you see this guy. They all got this pamphlet that says Horizon, and it's some guy back in New York that's selling this property that's not under military protection out there. And he's setting them right into Comanche territory to set up on this river. And the Comanches are just murdering everybody that comes there. So you kind of see that at the end that, he's just, yeah. By the time, they'll never be back because the Comanches are going to slaughter them. So I just keep selling the same property over and over. And in the whole movie, you're going, what the hell's this Horizon crap? And you see the first settlers there, and then the second settlers come, and they get attacked. And then there's a lot of good actors, like Sam Worthington's playing the captain, and he's like, "Didn't y'all talk to the last residents?" And the guy goes, he points across the river, and you see 3 crosses, and those are crosses from the first people you saw at the beginning of the movie. And then there at the end, you go, "Oh man, this dude's just sending these people out there, and he knows they're not coming back. Like, hey, dummy, there was Indians everywhere. They're not coming back; they're being killed." But everybody, and he shows like, it's pretty graphic of how the Native Americans were killing everybody. But the Native American tribes, they were also warring with each other. So it's like they all had their land, and now here comes the white people. And
everybody's crazy.
In the secret book, the fairies, it says the fairies were warning the natives about the white man. Yeah. And they said when they showed up, the fairies started disappearing. The kid follows the shining people all the way to the coast and turns around, sees white man coming, turns back around, the fairies are gone. So you're going to learn that Native American history too. But I heard some guy behind me going, did the Indians really killing people? Like, yeah, they were. That's what you hear when you hear, the Native American tribes complaining about. It's like, listen, there was a war between American soldiers and the Native American tribes. And just like any war, someone has to lose. But on the backside of that loss, they were also treated unfairly, just like everybody else was.
That's right. Hey, my phone's gonna die, man.
Huh?
My phone's gonna die.
Yeah, we've been on
out of batteries here.
We'll go ahead and end this. So I'll see if it uploads.
It was good being on here with you, man.
All right, man. We'll do it again next month and see if this thing works.
Watch the 12 Puzzle podcast. Go to DCCR page too. Thanks a lot, man. Peace out.
All right, man. See you soon. Bye.